The Tale of Zura Wildbraid. Born beneath the canopy of towering oaks and silver birches, Zura Wildbraid was raised between two worlds. The unyielding strength of her orcish father, a revered blacksmith, and the nurturing wisdom of her human mother, a healer and seer of the village. From an early age, Zura displayed an uncanny connection to nature. She was drawn to the whispering winds, the murmuring brooks, and the unspoken language of the trees. While her father taught her resilience, her mother guided her into the delicate balance of the natural world. It was during one of her childhood wanderings that she encountered an injured Trent, its bark cracked and its ancient body leaning with exhaustion. Others feared the creature, but Zura, filled with compassion, knelt beside it and applied what little she knew of healing. The Treant, in gratitude, bestowed upon her a gift, an oakwood staff infused with the wisdom of the forest. As years passed, her bond with the land only deepened, and she became a guardian of the wilds, a druid who sought not to command nature, but to exist in harmony with it. The winds whispered secrets through the canopy of Ferrowood, carrying the scent of damp earth and blooming ivy. Zura Wildbraid stood at the forest's edge, her keen eyes fixed on the sprawling labyrinth of gnarled roots and towering oaks ahead. The Verdant Eclipse was mere days away, and the rogue druids were already on the move. It was an event prophesied by the oldest druids, a rare celestial alignment when the silver moon passed directly over the hidden heart of Ferrowood, casting a shadow infused with raw natural magic. For a single hour, the heart of the grove would bloom with its most sacred fruit, an offering of boundless vitality. Legends whispered that those who consumed the heart fruit would be granted dominion over nature itself. Adjusting the straps of her satchel, Zura took a deep breath. Her fingers brushed against the ancient oak staff she carried, a gift from the Treant elder she had once saved. It pulsed faintly, sensing the disturbance deep within the forest. She had spent her life walking the delicate thread between her orcish strength and human wisdom. With her father's unyielding spirit and her mother's deep attunement to nature, she had honed her craft as a druid of rare potential. But she was no warrior of brute force. She fought with wit and will, outthinking those who sought to exploit nature rather than coexist with it. Soon, that battle would be tested. The path ahead was fraught with challenges. As she moved deeper into the Ferrowood, she noticed the eerie silence that had settled over the land. Birds did not sing, and the usual rustle of creatures moving through the underbrush was absent. The trees, ancient and wise, whispered warnings in their creaks and groans. Something unnatural had taken root here. The first sign of corruption appeared near the Emberfen Brook, a once pristine stream now tainted with dark sludge. Trees leaned unnaturally, their branches twisted like grasping fingers. She knelt by the waters, whispering an incantation. The brook trembled, resisting at first, before clearing in response to her magic. But the corruption was deep-seated. This was merely a symptom, not the source. She pressed on, knowing that Maelthorn, the corruptor's hand, was at work. It was then that she found it, a clearing where the light seemed to dim unnaturally, the air thick with stagnation. At its center lay an ancient spirit, bound within a prison of rotting vines, its form flickering with fading blue light. The spirit was a towering figure, its translucent form resembling an ancient stag woven from living wood and glimmering sapphire leaves. A crown of delicate silver branches adorned its head, its ethereal eyes filled with pain and wisdom. The spirit, once a guardian of Ferrowood, had been ensnared by Maelthorn's corruption, its power leached to feed his dark ambitions. Its massive antlers, once vibrant with the essence of the forest, were dulled, the energy within them almost spent. The vines twisted around its legs and torso, pulsating with a sickly, unnatural glow, draining the spirit's life with each passing moment. Zura knelt before the being, sensing its suffering. She placed her hands upon the ground, channeling warmth and vitality through the roots beneath her. "You are not forgotten," she whispered. The vines resisted her magic at first, tightening around the spirit like a last desperate grasp of the corruption. But she did not relent. Drawing from the harmony she had learned in both her human and Orcish heritage, she poured herself into the spell. A pulse of green energy radiated outward, forcing the corruption to wither and break apart. The spirit gasped, its form regaining its strength, its light returning to a steady, calming glow. The sickly vines disintegrated into dust, and the clearing, once choked by Maelthorn's taint, was reborn with a vibrant energy. The spirit turned its luminous gaze upon her. "You have freed me," it spoke, its voice like the rustling of leaves in an autumn breeze. "And in return, I shall shield you when the time comes. Your heart is true, and you will not stand alone." With a final surge of magic, the spirit wove a blessing into Zura's very essence, a protective ward, unseen but powerful, ensuring that when the storm of magic broke, she alone would stand untouched. The great stag bowed its head to her before dissolving into motes of light, dispersing into the forest it had long protected. Zura found them at the Weeping Hollow, near the heart of the grove, where the trees twisted unnaturally around a stone dais. Maelthorn stood at its center, draped in robes of darkened bark and moss, his golden eyes glowing with cruel intensity. Around him, rogue druids chanted in rhythmic unison, their magic feeding into the corruption spreading through the land. "You are late, Wildbraid," Maelthorn said, his voice both mocking and bitter. "Did you think you could stop what is inevitable?" Zura tightened her grip on her staff, taking slow, measured steps forward. "Nature's power is not yours to wield like a leash. You have turned its gifts into chains." He laughed, low and hollow. "Nature does not need balance. It needs a hand to guide it." He raised his own staff, and the ground beneath them trembled. Roots lashed at the earth, pulsing with his twisted magic. "And I have become that hand." Zura's jaw tightened. The fight had begun. The moment Maelthorn thrust his staff forward, the forest writhed in protest. Vines shot out like striking serpents, aiming for Zura, but she wove her fingers through the air, calling forth an emerald barrier of swirling leaves. The vines recoiled, hissing as if alive, their corruption unable to break through her shield. With a flick of her wrist, Zura summoned the roots beneath Maelthorn's feet to entangle him, but he countered with a surge of energy, the dark vines snapping away her spell like brittle twigs. Rogue druids chanted behind him, their combined power feeding his control over the land. Shadows gathered at their fingertips, twisting like smoke. Summoning the strength of the forest, Zura leaped onto a low-hanging branch, and hurled a wave of raw nature's wrath toward them. Tendrils of light burst from her hands, striking down the nearest druids, severing their connection to Maelthorn. One by one, they faltered, clutching their chests as the corruption withdrew from their veins. The air crackled with energy, and for the first time, doubt flickered in Maelthorn's golden eyes. The battle at the heart of the grove unfolded in a blur of magic and fury. As the eclipse reached its peak, Zura channeled the spirit's energy and called upon the ancient will of the forest itself. The great tree shuddered, and in an act of defiance, released its fruit not into the hands of mortals, but into the wind. Maelthorn's scream of rage turned to one of horror as the energy he had stolen was torn from him. His elven form remained, but the power that had once filled him was gone. He fell to his knees, clawing at the earth. His mind, too, began to unravel, spiraling into incoherence. No longer the master of wilds, he was left wandering, broken and powerless, a mere shadow of his former self. The rogue druids scattered, their ambitions turned to dust, their connection to Maelthorn's corrupted magic severed. Yet Zura remained untouched. The spirit's blessing shielded her, preserving her magic while the others were left empty and powerless. She stood amidst the stillness of the grove, the whispers of the wilds settling into a peaceful murmur. The great tree, though weakened, remained standing, its roots deep and unbroken. She exhaled deeply, turning her gaze toward the horizon as dawn broke over Ferrowood. The first golden rays of sunlight painted the treetops in hues of amber and green, breathing new life into the forest. The battle was over, but her journey was far from complete. There would always be those who sought to disrupt the balance, and as long as she drew breath, she would be there to stand against them. Zura took one last look at the heart of the grove, now safe, its sacred energy no longer at risk of falling into the wrong hands. With a steady step, she walked forward, disappearing into the wilds that had chosen her as their guardian. The forest sighed in relief, and somewhere in the distance, the spirit she had freed watched over her, its presence a silent promise that she would never be alone.